The Vatican is the last absolute monarchy in the world today. The Pope, when he is elected, is answerable to no human power. He has absolute authority over the entire Roman Catholic Church, direct authority that reaches down to individual members. He is the supreme judge, the supreme legislator, and the supreme executive.
And I want to suggest some ways in which Catholics and Adventists can actually learn from each other. According to Adventist Church historian George Knight, the Catholic Church and the Seventh-day Adventist Church are the only churches that can claim to be truly Catholic. As Adventist pioneer Ellen White suggested, now present a fair front to the world, but it remains unchanged. I believe it is time to distance ourselves from this characterization.
Has the papacy influenced Seventh-day Adventist church governance? You see, family, as we've already stated, organization from the church's standpoint is merely a tool to systematically ensure that the work of the people who are the church is more systematic so that the everlasting gospel can be spread in such a manner so as to reach the largest amount of souls possible. But unfortunately, in this dispensation, even amongst us as Seventh-day Adventists, we have adopted the Catholic idea that there is some type of divine divine holiness associated with the organization as an entity in and of itself. Now, I'm going to actually explain this principle in a little bit more detail via a particular quotation. Notice this. Again, we want to see how the Seventh-day Adventist Church has unfortunately adopted a very Catholic interpretation of church governance. Notice this. Now, mind you, we're eventually going to get to the tithe and all of its influence, but this foundation is pivotal. Notice this quotation. Now, this is not a quotation from the Spirit of Prophecy. This is a historical statement referring to the nature of the papacy as it pertains to their ideas of governance. Notice this. Now, this is taken from the book Ecclesiastical Empire. Again, anyone familiar with Glad Tidings 3 a.m. knows that we quote heavily from many of our pioneers. If our pioneers were alive today and they could see all of these debates that are raging regarding tithe and organization and all of this, the pioneers of this movement, again, would not recognize the organization that professes to represent Seventh-day Adventism. Especially, and we'll eventually get to it, all of these, sadly, individuals that are using their influence to arbitrarily defend an organization that is actively working against the authority and the work of heaven, they would be literally flabbergasted, again, speaking of the pioneers, if they could see the current condition of the reality. Notice this. Again, this is Ecclesiastical Empire dealing with the Catholic idea of governance. This says, consistently enough, like those who made the papacy, they theorize learnedly about the two distinct spheres of the state and the church. According to the theory, the state is in itself a moral person distinct from the people, having an individuality and responsibility to God of its own. So you see, in the Catholic idea of governance, whether it is in the state or the church, the Catholic idea of governance is that the organization is a living, conscious entity in and of itself, completely apart from the people. That the people do not comprise what the church is, but that the organization bestows holiness or church membership upon the people. Again, as we saw in our first session, from a biblical standpoint, from a inspired standpoint, the church is the people, not an organization. The church is the people. An organization is merely a tool to systematically forward the work of the people. You see, this is also the confusion that the Jews had when Jesus was on the earth doing his ministry. You see, the Jews believed, even the disciples, they believed this Catholic idea of church governance, that there was some type of divine holiness associated with their Jewish system, and that because their system was so divinely holy, they could never imagine that that system would be destroyed. As when you read in Matthew chapter 24, when they asked, what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Because of what Jesus was saying regarding the destruction of Jerusalem, the disciples believed that if their temple and system was going to be destroyed, that meant that it was going to be the end of the world. And the reason, again, why they came to that conclusion was because of the ideas that they cherished regarding false ideas of church governance. As we just read this quotation regarding the papacy, they believed that that organization itself, that their church organization had some type of moral, character, independent identity completely separate from the people. Now, in the Seventh-day Adventist context, we have cherished and we have come to cherish the exact same idea. We are no longer believing and practicing that the church is the people, but we are actually believing and teaching this Catholic idea that organization is a living, breathing entity in and of itself, and that unless you are connected with this living, breathing, independent entity, you are not part of the church. Now, I'm going to read and finish the quotation. It says again, that the state is in itself a moral person distinct from the people, having an individuality and responsibility to God of its own. And in its sphere, it must be religious and serve God, and cause all people notice to do likewise in its own way, and apply the moral law to itself and everybody else. So also associated with this arbitrary idea of church governance is also the idea and the belief that this living, breathing entity has the moral obligation and power invested upon it and in it by God in order to compel the people to follow its dictates. Again, I wonder if these same principles are being practiced in the Seventh-day Adventist context. And the answer is simply yes. We saw this in the COVID reality, and we see this in so many other sectors, and even as it pertains to this tithe situation. The people are not being left free to follow the dictates of their own conscience, but are being told now in this dispensation that they have a moral obligation to give to this organization, and that unless they do that, that they are in the grossest excesses of apostasy. Again, this is not the biblical idea and interpretation of church governance that has been given by inspiration. Again, unfortunately, we have adopted a very Catholic idea of church governance.